Right, the Flight Test Versa, quite a big wing, 38-inch wingspan and good for carrying FPV gear and cameras and so on. But if you want to use it in the pusher configuration, notoriously difficult to balance. So my solution was to add a lovely nose which gives you the possibility of putting a battery in the nose and making it much easier to attain the centre of gravity required. So here's how I went about it. I downloaded the plans, tiled plans, stuck them all together, cut it out, and 4 sheets of foam I think it was, and built this. It's 38-inch wingspan, so I can't actually get it in on the video, but I fancy making it with a pusher prop because I plan to use it for FPV or mounting a camera. But from what I've read, very difficult to get the CoG right because a motor here and so much weight here. I've read of people having to put at least 100 or 200 grams on the front, even with the camera. In fact, with the 7x5 prop and the A2212 motor and this Firefly 2 mounted here and putting 1000 milliamp 3S as far forward as I could, it still needed 100 grams here, and I hate adding weight to a model. This was already 300 grams before you start with the battery and motor and so on. So I came up with the idea of putting a nose on it, which means I can put the battery further forward, and that should make it unnecessary to add any weight. Anyway, jumping ahead a day or two, this is what my finished nose looks like, and I'm well pleased with the proportions. I've added a few little winglets on here. I think it actually enhances this model quite a lot, but better still, with a 2S or 3S mounted up in my nose here, and the great little Firefly 2 FPV camera, which is actually a proper camera in its own right, just here. It balances absolutely beautifully on the CoG, which is just here. But it's worked out really well. Let's get on to how I did it, and I'll tell you what kit I've got on here, what motor and so on. I'm planning to put an undercarriage on because I don't much like hand launching, and apparently this isn't the easiest thing to launch, but I'm going to put a little undercarriage on so I'll be able to take off from the ground. I've actually bought this undercarriage here, which it should be here in a few days, and then, unless I can get somebody to throw this for me, it'll be time for a maiden. So don't forget to hit subscribe down there and the notification bell, and then you'll get an email when I come to maiden this baby. But I'm well pleased with it anyway. I think that worked out really well. So this is how I did it. So looking for a nose, as it happens I've just built, haven't really finished it yet, the Flight Test Funjet, spelt P-U-N or something, and I figured that's got a nice shaped nose. So downloaded the tiled nose again because I'd cut it all up, widened it by a fraction so that it will actually take this battery crossways. It took it that way anyway, but I'd rather have a bit more width there. I've widened it a bit, extended the cockpit, extended this bit here so this will go over the extended cockpit, and the next step, the scary bit, is to cut into this and figure how I'm going to slide this nose on. Now I'm going to have about 5 inches extending over the front of this here, over the bow of the plane. So that should be more than enough to get the battery out there and make the CoG easier to attain. I've tapered the back end of this so that it will come up underneath, because this is flat underneath, so that should taper and come in that way. And I've extended the roundness of the cockpit here so that hopefully it will come in and blend into the top of this. Well, this is roughly the proportions of it, and that's my slot. So the idea being that the nose will extend about so far. If I want to, if it doesn't look quite right, I can always cut the slot a bit further and push it back. But of course the further back you put it means less weight up front to counterbalance this pusher prop here. So made a couple of slots. I'm going to cut this bit out and then see what it looks like sliding it in. So I've got to get my scalpel blade now and cut into this, and of course that will leave, as I said, the flat sheet there, which hopefully that slot will slide onto. One thing I'd semi-forgotten was the position of the strut, which runs across here and helps give the wing its airfoil shape. As it happens, I've just about got it in the right place, but it's pretty obvious I'm going to have to cut that back a bit to slide it in so that it won't hit the strut. but I think that's going to be pretty good. Right, well, it doesn't look bad, but it's a bit on the long side. I've already had to trim it a bit, but what I'm going to do is trim this back a little bit more, cut the slot a bit further back, about another 3/4 of an inch, so that will slide back a bit further, and I think that would be about right if it's back to about there. But that's worked okay. Well, as you can see, the actual two halves have come apart now, but it does occur to me the best way to approach this is to actually make a little template out of cardboard. Cut the slot, make a template. But you live and learn as you go along with these things, and I find it's much more fun building and modifying a model than just building the thing straight from plans. Anyway, that's 20 mil there I'm taking out of each slot, and I reckon that will just about make the proportions about right. Well, I think proportionality wise that looks about right now. Nice shape. I didn't glue it all together before I started because I thought it would make it much more difficult to cut, but in fact all I need to do is, and if you can see it, is trim that bit round, give it a nice little curve. The top is just about right. I could just extend the curve a little bit so that it blends in, but actually I think that looks pretty good, and that gives me quite a lot of space to put the battery right up here and do away with the fact that it needs all that weight. Right, I think it's time for some glue. Right, a bit of hot glue along here first. Along that edge and along that edge. Make sure it's square with my little square. Press it down, down and in. I let it cool and then I put a bead along like so. I just realised the downside of this actually coming apart is the fact that it's hard. I've got to make sure I get this absolutely lined up properly now, but anyway, should be easy enough. So I think I'll mark that so I know exactly that I'm going to get it in the right place. Otherwise it's not going to go together properly. Yeah, that should do that. Bit more glue. Let it cool a little bit. Make sure it hasn't stuck on the bench. Yeah, that looks okay. Never looks as good as it does on the flight test build videos, but who cares. The next one would be, this is a prototype. Right, and before I glue that, I'm just going to put a small doubler in here just to reinforce that little tiny bit of the nose. But it's getting there. Well, there's my Versa nose. It looks a bit tatty, I know, but it is a prototype. Deliberately left with a little flap so the battery can slide in. All I've got to do now is glue it into position. Right, well there it is. Looks quite nicely in proportion to me. Opening flap. If I'd thought a bit more about it, I could have considered more about the electrics. But it all went in very easily afterwards anyway. But considering motors at the back, battery at the front, receiver and speed controller here, it's only a question of feeding through to the servos and the motor, so not too bad really. But I'm quite pleased with that, and as I say, it is a prototype, so it is a bit scruffy because it's kind of grows as it comes along, but it should make balancing this a lot easier, and I think it actually makes it look a lot prettier. Bead of glue around here, bead of glue on the inside, bead of glue along the bottom. Considering I didn't really know what I was doing and worked out as I went, I'm quite pleased with it. Right, okay, let's see what it looks like once you've got a motor on it. Right, so here it is with everything installed and ready to fly, apart from the fact I've got to figure a way to launch it, as I mentioned. Probably put an undercarriage on, although I'm considering the idea of making a kind of start-off ramp with a couple of bits of dowel, like so, because when I just tested with a 3S, I think this would actually take off vertically. It would certainly take off on a ramp with a 30-degree slope or something, but anyway, more of that later. So let's take a look. Little compartment here, takes the 3S nicely, and as I said, with the camera mounted here, even a fairly lightweight camera, it actually balances beautifully on the CoG marks. I'm still on 35 meg and I don't care, because I've got lots of models with 35 meg receivers, and so you can joke and take the mickey if you want. I've put the receiver here, fits nicely, and the antenna right down there out of the way. I made a little compartment for it to sit in here. A little bit of foam, just keeps it tidy. Battery slides in nicely here, as I say. I managed to feed the wires for the speed controller through here, so they're out of the way. I've actually left a couple of ventilation holes here, although it's a 30 amp speed controller and it doesn't appear to get warm even with this motor and the prop. Motor, as I said before, is A2212 6T 2200 kV, and that is a 7x5E prop. So pretty much ready to fly. I've added these, which I think give it a bit more stability, stop it yawing maybe, I don't know. Actually, I put a couple underneath, partly with the idea that if I make a ramp, it's going to need something to slide along. But when I tested, certainly a 2S will work fine with it. But with a 3S, it's quite ballistic, and holding it vertically and giving it full throttle, it actually wanted to just take off straight out of my hand and go straight up. But that's that for now. Sorry, no maiden on this video, but part 2 will be a maiden, either with the undercarriage, which I'm waiting for, or by using a ramp made from a couple of dowels. So don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell, and then you'll get an email when part 2 comes up. But I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks again for watching. If I didn't say that, why not check out my channel? Lots of flying on there, radio controlled models, paragliding, paramotoring, drones, FPV stuff, and so on. But that's it. As I say, I've said that 3 times now. Safe flying, happy flying, and I'll catch you again soon.